Across frozen ground under clear skies, Ice Age cold worked silently. Survival hinged not on strength, but on managing heat loss, scarce fuel, and shelter systems. Cold acted constantly, draining heat from exposed skin and breath, forcing continuous behavioral adjustments to slow loss and survive prolonged winters under Ice Age conditions everywhere. Temperature set survival limits faster than hunger, injury, or fatigue, dictating daily decisions before food. Scarcity, wounds, or exhaustion became immediately fatal in freezing environments routinely. Wind intensified cooling, stripping warmth faster than still air steadily by increasing convective heat transfer, turning moderate cold into lethal exposure within minutes during storms repeatedly. Open plains offered no barriers, maximizing convective heat loss reliably, leaving moving groups fully exposed to wind chill, sunlight, and long distances without refuge anywhere nearby. Frozen ground drew warmth downward through conduction during rest always, requiring insulation beneath bodies, bedding, or raised sleeping surfaces to prevent nighttime hypothermia during immobility periods. Metabolic heat required steady calories, not occasional meals alone overall, because digestion sustained core temperature, while irregular intake caused rapid cooling, weakness, and eventual collapse quickly. Fat burned slowly, sustaining warmth when activity stopped overnight carefully, making fatty tissues and marrow critical reserves during rest, darkness, and extended cold exposure periods consistently. Movement converted food into heat, delaying dangerous core cooling repeatedly through muscle exertion, circulation, and respiration, allowing travel, work, and hunting without immediate thermal failure onset. Stillness reduced heat production, letting insulation fall behind losses continually. So prolonged inactivity, even sheltered, increased risk of hypothermia, unless offset by shared warmth or fire. Work schedules favored motion during coldest hours to stay warm, prioritizing travel, tool making, or hunting, when sunlight, visibility, and body heat generation aligned against freezing conditions. Hunting choices balanced effort, costs against calories gained from prey, ensuring energy expenditure never exceeded thermal returns required to maintain body temperature during extended pursuits periods. Large prey yielded weeks of energy, justifying high pursuit risks despite danger, injury, or failure, because fat stores buffered groups through storms, scarcity, and inactivity afterward. Team hunts shared labor, lowering individual exertion and exposure time, while coordinating movement, driving animals, and reducing chance of solitary cooling, injury, or fatal exhaustion events. Preservation extended meat and fat into future heating reserves steadily, through drying, freezing, or storage, allowing metabolic warmth after hunts ended, landscapes emptied, and winter deepened. Shelter primarily blocked wind, reducing convective loss from bodies reliably without requiring high interior temperatures, focusing instead on limiting airflow, drafts, and exposed surface area overall. Caves and boulders broke airflow, creating calmer thermal pockets always, where fires, bodies, and bedding retained warmth longer than open terrain, reducing nightly heat loss significantly. Shallow pits used ground stability to moderate interior temperatures overall by buffering wind, storing residual heat, and limiting rapid exposure to external temperature swings over night periods. Smaller shelters minimized air volume needing heat each night carefully, improving efficiency, since less space required warming from fires, bodies, or stored thermal mass inside shelters. Entrances faced away from winds to prevent interior drafts repeatedly, reducing convective heat loss, smoke disruption, and sudden temperature drops during storms, nightfall, or shifting weather. Fire burned sparingly. Fuel shortages punished waste immediately in winter, forcing careful tending, ember management, and reliance on insulation, thermal mass, and shared body heat overnight. Hearths were placed for radiant warming, not whole air heating continually, so bodies absorbed heat directly while minimizing wasted energy, warming unused shelter volume during prolonged cold. Heated stones stored energy, releasing warmth after flames faded steadily, providing delayed heat overnight when fuel conservation and rest-limited fire maintenance became essential for survival. Ventilation stayed narrow, trading clean air for retained heat reliably, because wide openings accelerated convective loss and quickly destabilized interior thermal balance during prolonged winter nights. Bedding insulated downward, slowing heat flow into frozen soil always, by creating barriers beneath bodies that reduced conductive loss during extended rest in extreme cold conditions. Fur trapped dead air, cutting radiation and convection simultaneously overall, making animal skins superior insulators compared to bare hide or plant materials in freezing ice age. Layered hides formed air gaps, multiplying insulation without tools carefully, as overlapping materials slowed heat escape while remaining flexible for movement across changing tasks and seasons. Clothing served as portable shelter during travel and hunting repeatedly, allowing warmth retention even when distant from fixed shelters or fires across open landscapes in winter. Tight seams prevented drafts at wrists, ankles, neck, and waist, reducing heat leakage where movement otherwise pumped cold air inside garments during extended activity outdoors periods. Bone needles enabled close stitching, improving fit and durability, allowing tailored garments that sealed edges and survived repeated wear through seasons, movement, repairs, washing, drying cycles. Moisture collapsed insulation, accelerating heat loss and hypothermia at night by eliminating trapped air and increasing conductive and evaporative cooling during snow, rain, thaw, contact, exposure. Drying garments restored loft, keeping trapped air functional again, which preserved insulation performance and prevented cumulative moisture damage from repeated use near fires, bodies, snow, ground. Crowded living spaces concentrated body heat within limited volume, raising interior temperatures more efficiently than isolated individuals alone could achieve during prolonged cold spells together reliably. Group sleep reduced surface area, slowing collective cooling rates by clustering bodies and sharing coverings that retained mutual warmth through long winter nights of inactivity repeatedly. Children and elders slept centrally, buffered by warmer bodies, where heat loss was lowest and assistance was immediately available during emergencies, illness, injury, cold, stress, nights. Night lowered metabolism, making insulation and storage heat critical, because reduced activity sharply decreased internal heat production until morning returned with movement, light, feeding, work, travel. Before sleep, layers increased to offset reduced heat production, anticipating metabolic slowdown and preventing rapid overnight temperature decline within confined shelters, shared, dark, icy, exposed environments. Fuel stockpiles determined whether groups stayed or migrated midwinter, as depleted supplies forced relocation despite danger, distance, and cold. During storms, darkness, scarcity, injury, risk, exposure. Bone, fat, and dung supplemented scarce wood for combustion when timber was unavailable, extending fire use through winter shortages across treeless regions, plains, tundra, camps, migrations. Embers were banked carefully, stretching heat through long darkness, allowing fires to revive quickly without expending scarce fuel during nights, storms, rest, illness, injury, exhaustion, survival. Stored warmth mattered more than flame, conserving limited fuel, because heat retention determined survival when combustion resources were exhausted across prolonged winters. Camps, shelters, movements, systems. Frostbite damaged function first, reducing grip, walking, and work before death, limiting survival tasks, mobility, hunting, tool-making. Response: endurance during prolonged cold exposure without immediate mortality. Hands and feet cooled fastest, demanding extra insulation attention because circulation favored cores, leaving extremities vulnerable during inactivity, wind, moisture exposure, and nighttime rest periods outdoors. Routines enforced vigilance, preventing small lapses from cascading for months under stress, fatigue, hunger, darkness, cold, where mistakes quickly became fatal without immediate correction by group. Traditions encoded practical rules for warmth, food, and shelter, ensuring survival knowledge persisted beyond individual experience through stories, habits, instruction during childhood, and hardship across generations. Observation guided refinements, replacing measurement with repeated outcomes under ice, because formal metrics were absent or unnecessary when survival feedback was immediate and unforgiving every season. Seasonal movement tracked prey and microclimates with better margins to balance warmth, calories, safety across shifting landscapes, and weather during long winters without fixed settlements available. Landscape memory identified safe camps, fuel sources, and windbreaks based on past winters. Failures, successes preserved through oral knowledge, shared among group members over many seasons. Children learned by doing, absorbing rules through daily repetition within shelters, hunts, chores, travel, internalizing survival behavior early before independent responsibility became unavoidable in adulthood later. Abandoned sites record failures where thermal systems could not hold during extreme cold, scarcity, miscalculation, leaving material traces in landscapes for archaeologists today to interpret carefully. Calorie deficits widened, driving winter deaths and group collapse when hunting failed, or migration delayed beyond metabolic tolerance of human physiology under sustained cold conditions alone. Birth timing avoided harsh peaks, aligning with spring resources to protect infants from lethal cold and ensure maternal survival during early development phases of life cycles. Cooperation redistributed risk, keeping weaker members alive longer in storms through shared food, warmth, labor, and collective decision-making during crises and scarcity events repeatedly occurring. Redundant strategies prevented single failures from becoming fatal by overlapping shelter, clothing, food systems. So loss never collapsed survival entirely during unpredictable winters and storms alone. Cold selected efficient designs, pruning wasteful habits quickly through survival pressure applied across generations, removing ineffective behaviors without mercy or exception in extreme climates globally repeatedly. Material limits narrowed options to stone, bone, hide, wood, reliably forcing optimization rather than invention within severe environmental constraints during glacial periods worldwide for humans everywhere. Small improvements accumulated, producing reliable winter survival systems in darkness through repeated testing, correction, memory across many generations without written records or centralized planning structures existing. Comfort meant sufficient warmth, not summer-like temperatures indoors and blizzards, where survival depended on minimal thresholds rather than luxury or excess energy use during winters alone. Winter was continuous pressure, not a short emergency event, steadily requiring long-term strategies rather than reactions to isolated crises over many months of exposure annually repeating. Nutrition controlled heat output, linking food directly to warmth, reliably through metabolism, digestion, circulation, rather than insulation alone during cold stress periods in winter conditions globally. Group size. Balanced shared heat against shared resource demand always. Too few lost warmth, too many starved under fixed supplies during long winters and migrations periods. Firelight extended work hours when daylight was scarce at night, allowing tool-making, repair, storytelling, and planning while bodies stayed warm together around controlled hearths inside shelters. Cold sensation warned early, prompting adjustments before collapse for months through posture, movement, layering, fire tending, sharing warmth, and shelter repositioning during long winters and nights. Smoke exposure was accepted when ventilation threatened heat loss overall because retaining warmth outweighed respiratory discomfort during extended cold confinement within small shelters and night hours. Immediate consequences trained judgment through harsh environmental feedback under ice, where mistakes produced injury, starvation, exposure, or death without delay across seasons repeatedly and generations persistently. Survival came from matching behavior to the physics of heat, rather than resisting cold with force, speed, or isolated strength alone under Ice Age conditions globally. Minor failures escalated rapidly, shrinking time to recover in storms, because cold reduced margins, exhausting bodies before corrections could occur during prolonged exposure and darkness nights. Each component depended on others, forming an interlocked system reliably, where shelter, clothing, fire, food, movement, and cooperation reinforced survival without single points failure during winter. Success required repeatable routines across many winters, and moves always, so knowledge persisted despite migration, loss, births, deaths, and changing environments over long timelines without writing. Endurance emerged from design discipline, not exceptional toughness alone carefully, as systems minimized strain, conserved energy, and reduced fatal error frequency under constant cold pressures daily. Heat management defined persistence, enabling life beneath advancing ice repeatedly by aligning shelter, clothing, food, movement, and cooperation with thermodynamics over generations worldwide during glacial periods.